Alejandro Lopez in Boynton Beach with an arrest report that says a victim had come here to the police department, and now there's an internal affairs investigation after she was shot and killed the same day. Documents describe the final moments that led up to the death of 34-year-old Danielle Fridelene in Boynton Beach.
Good morning, you Robens Cesar, sir. Very well.
The suspect, Robens Cesar, told police the two had dated, but that she wouldn't get back together with him and said he couldn't stand to see her with another man.
"Oh, did you bring a gun to kill me?" Those were Fridelene Daniel's final words spoken on the phone to her aunt in Haiti as her ex-boyfriend approached her in a Florida parking lot. Moments later, the sound of gunfire echoed through the meadows on the green apartment complex. It was like boom, boom, and then a brief 2-second pause and 3 or 4 more, recalled Dawn Rosado, a neighbor who heard the shots that morning. "We just kind of froze there for a moment." What makes this murder particularly devastating, just 45 minutes earlier, Fridelene had been standing inside the Boynton Beach Police Department, desperately pleading for help. With fear in her eyes and a Creole accent in her voice, she told Officer Jermaine Jones exactly what would happen. "I don't want him behind me because he has a gun. I don't want you make me die." The officer's response: "You can't fix this. You gotta find you a new boo." Welcome to True Crime Malice. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now, because we expose not just the criminals who commit these horrific acts, but also the systemic failures that allow them to happen. Today's case will leave you questioning everything about how we protect those who ask for help. This isn't just about a jealous ex-boyfriend who couldn't accept rejection. It's about a woman who did everything right, who recognized the danger, who sought help from authorities, and was still gunned down in broad daylight. The clock was ticking from the moment Fridelene walked out of that police station. The system had exactly 45 minutes to save her life. Instead, it sent her directly into the path of her killer. What would you do if you knew someone was following you with a gun? Where would you turn if the police dismissed your fears? Let us know in the comments below and tell us what state or country you're watching from. Your experiences might help someone else recognize the warning signs before it's too late. Before she became a headline, Fridelene Daniel was a 34-year-old mother building a life in Boynton Beach, Florida. Her world revolved around her 16-year-old daughter and their modest apartment at Meadows on the Green complex. The walls of their home displayed photos of Haiti, the homeland she'd left behind but kept close through daily calls with family. Her voice carried the melodic lilt of her native Creole, an accent that would later become crucial in understanding how her pleas for help might have been misinterpreted or dismissed. Friends described Fridelene as determined and protective, qualities that served her well as a single mother navigating life in America. "She was always smiling, always thinking about her daughter's future," said a neighbor who often saw Fridelene leaving early for work. Her routine was predictable: wake before dawn, prepare breakfast for her daughter, head to work, and return in time to help with homework. Weekends were reserved for church and community gatherings where Haitian families maintained cultural connections. These details matter because they show what was stolen on November 8, 2023. Not just a life, but a future filled with possibilities. A daughter lost her mother. Haiti lost a daughter. A community lost a member who contributed far more than statistics can measure. The irony of Fridelene's story cuts deep. She had escaped a country known for political instability and violence, only to be murdered in a place where she thought she'd found safety. The American dream she pursued ended in an American nightmare, one that began with a relationship she couldn't have known would turn deadly. As we examine what happened to Fridelene, consider this: how many women in your own community are silently living with similar fears? How many are one police interaction away from safety or tragedy? The path that led to Fridelene's death began months earlier, when she made the decision that domestic violence experts identify as the most dangerous moment in an abusive relationship. She chose to leave. Robens Cesar entered Fridelene's life like many relationships begin, with promise and attention. At 41, he was older, established, and initially presented himself as a stable partner for Fridelene and a potential father figure for her teenage daughter. Friends noted that Fridelene seemed happy in the early months, often mentioning how Cesar would help with household repairs and drive her daughter to school when Fridelene worked early shifts. But beneath the surface, warning signs emerged. Cesar began checking Frideline's phone, questioning her whereabouts, and showing up unexpectedly at her workplace. What she initially interpreted as interest gradually revealed itself as control. He wanted to know where she was every minute, recalled a co-worker who witnessed Cesar calling Fridelene repeatedly during shifts. If she didn't answer right away, he'd show up at the door looking angry. The relationship deteriorated when Fridelene began asserting boundaries. She limited his access to her apartment, stopped sharing her work schedule, and eventually told him she needed space. Cesar's response was immediate and alarming. He refused to accept her decision. Text messages recovered from Frideline's phone showed the progression of his behavior. "You can't leave me. We belong together. Who are you seeing? Tell me his name. I'll make you regret this decision." When Fridelene blocked his number, Cesar began appearing outside her apartment complex, sometimes sitting in his car for hours. Neighbors reported seeing him circle the parking lot late at night, headlights off, engine running. He left notes on her windshield, some pleading, others threatening. The stalking escalated to following her to grocery stores, her daughter's school, and even church. Fridelene began varying her routes home and asking friends to check her apartment before entering. She installed additional locks on her doors and windows. What Fridelene didn't know was that Cesar had purchased a handgun 3 weeks after their breakup. While she was taking precautions against harassment, he was preparing for something far more permanent. 2 days before the murder, Cesar approached Fridelene in the parking lot after she returned from work. A neighbor overheard him say, "If I can't have you, nobody will." Fridelene rushed inside and called her sister, who urged her to contact police. Fridelene hesitated, worried about escalating the situation or facing immigration questions. "I'll handle it myself," she told her sister. "He'll eventually move on." But Cesar wasn't moving on. He was moving closer to violence with each rejection. The pattern followed what domestic violence experts identify as the most dangerous period in abusive relationships, the time immediately after separation when the abuser realizes they're losing control. On the evening of November 7th, Frideline's daughter noticed a car that looked like Cesar's parked across from their apartment. They kept the lights off that night and slept in the same room. Fridelene placed a chair against the bedroom door, a makeshift barricade against the threat she could feel closing in. What Fridelene didn't realize was that by the next morning the countdown to tragedy had already begun. In less than 24 hours, her worst fears would materialize in broad daylight, and the system designed to protect her would fail in the most fundamental way. The question wasn't if Cesar would act on his threats, but when, and whether anyone would take her warnings seriously before it was too late. November 8, 2023 began like most weekdays for Fridelene Daniel. She woke at 5:30 a.m., prepared breakfast for her daughter, and packed her lunch. The morning routine was punctuated by small moments of normalcy, checking homework, reminding her daughter about an upcoming test, discussing weekend plans to visit friends. What made this Wednesday different was the tension that had built overnight. Fridelene peered through the blinds several times while getting ready, scanning the parking lot for Cesar's vehicle. She had her daughter check the hallway before they left the apartment. "Be careful today," Fridelene told her daughter as they walked to the car. "If anything feels wrong at school, call me immediately." At 7:15 a.m., Fridelene pulled into the high school drop-off lane. She waited until her daughter entered the building before pulling away, a precaution she'd recently adopted. As she exited the school parking lot, a chill ran through her body. In her rearview mirror, 3 cars back, she spotted Cesar's black sedan. Fridelene took an unexpected turn, then another. The black sedan followed each movement. She accelerated through a yellow light, hoping to lose him. He sped through the red. There was no mistaking his intentions now. This wasn't coincidental. This was pursuit. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel as she considered her options. Going home would reveal her location. Going to work would put colleagues at risk. Going to a friend's house might endanger them. The police station was 7 minutes away. At 8:12 a.m., security cameras captured Frideline's car pulling into the Boynton Beach Police Department parking lot. She glanced over her shoulder repeatedly as she hurried inside. What she didn't immediately realize was that Cesar had parked across the street, watching. The station lobby was quiet that morning. Fridelene approached the desk officer, her words coming quickly, her accent thickening with stress. She explained that her ex-boyfriend was following her, that she feared for her life, that he possessed a gun. At 8:17 a.m., Officer Jermaine Jones emerged to speak with her. Body camera footage would later reveal their conversation, a critical 5 minutes that should have triggered immediate protective measures. "He follows me everywhere," Fridelene explained, her voice shaking. "Yesterday he waited outside my work. Today he followed me from my daughter's school." As Officer Jones began taking notes, the station door opened. Cesar walked in casually as if his arrival was perfectly normal. The body camera captured Frideline's reaction, her body stiffening, her eyes widening with fear. "That's him," she whispered to Officer Jones. "That's him right there." What happened next defied all police protocol for domestic violence situations. Instead of separating them, instead of running Cesar's background for previous incidents, instead of checking for registered weapons, Officer Jones spoke to them together. He treated the situation as a simple disagreement between exes, rather than a potentially lethal threat.
When I move in there, I don't want him behind me. Because he have a gang. I don't want you to make me die.
He got what?
Gun, I don't know their name.
So she don't want you to come in to see her or anything. That's okay.
Back on November 8th, the victim, Fridelene Daniel, with a noticeable accent, is speaking with Boynton Beach police officer Jermaine Jones at the police station. Her ex-boyfriend, Robens Cesar, was there too in the lobby. The officer eventually told the woman to call police if Cesar showed up again at her house. The police would give him a trespassing warning then. The two then walked out.
At 8:26 a.m., Officer Jones pulled Cesar aside. Their conversation, also captured on body camera, revealed the officer's fundamental misunderstanding of the danger. "You can't fix this," Jones told Cesar. "You gotta find you a new boo." At 8:32 a.m., Fridelene was advised to call police if Cesar showed up at her home. She was told officers would issue a trespass warning if that happened. No report was filed, no protective measures were implemented. No one checked if Cesar had a weapon. At 8:35 a.m., Fridelene left the station. 5 minutes later, Cesar walked out. The clock was ticking. Have you ever tried to get help from authorities and felt dismissed? Or have you witnessed someone's concerns being minimized? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help others recognize when the system is failing them before it's too late. As Fridelene drove away from the police station, she made a fateful decision that seemed logical in the moment. She headed home, believing she had at least initiated contact with police. She didn't know that Cesar was already formulating his response to what he viewed as her ultimate betrayal, reporting him to authorities. The next 20 minutes would be the last of Fridelene's life. The Boynton Beach Police Department lobby appears on security footage as a standard government space. Beige walls, fluorescent lighting, a front desk protected by bulletproof glass. What the cameras captured that morning was anything but standard. A textbook example of how domestic violence victims can be failed by the very system designed to protect them. Fridelene stood at the counter, her body language revealing her distress, arms wrapped around herself, constantly glancing toward the door. When Officer Jermaine Jones approached, she visibly relaxed, believing help had arrived. The body camera footage, later reviewed during the Internal Affairs investigation, captured their exchange with crystal clarity. Fridelene's accent was pronounced due to her stress, but her message was unmistakable. "He follows me everywhere. I broke up with him 2 months ago. He won't accept it." Jones nodded, taking minimal notes. "How long were you together?" "Almost 1 year. But now he waits outside my home, my work. Today he followed me from my daughter's school." The pivotal moment came when Fridelene leaned forward, lowering her voice. When I move in there, I don't want him behind me because he has a gun. I don't want you make me die." This statement, clear, direct, containing an explicit threat, should have triggered immediate action. Florida law enforcement protocols mandate specific responses when firearms are mentioned in domestic disputes. Officer Jones should have 1. Documented the gun threat, 2. Checked for registered weapons, 3. Considered an emergency protective order. 4. Detained Cesar for questioning. 5. Conducted a threat assessment. He did none of these things. When Cesar walked into the station minutes later, the dynamic shifted dramatically. Rather than recognizing this as confirmation of Friedland's stalking claims, Jones appeared to view it as an opportunity for mediation. The footage shows Jones motioning Cesar over, creating a three-way conversation that domestic violence experts universally condemn. Fridelene visibly recoiled, stepping back as Cesar approached. "So what's going on between you two?" Jones asked, as if addressing a minor disagreement. Cesar, appearing calm and collected, spoke with practiced ease. "I just want to talk to her, she's overreacting." This moment represented a critical juncture where professional training should have kicked in. Abusers often present as reasonable to authorities while victims appear emotional, a dynamic that can mislead untrained officers. Jones fell directly into this trap. After brief questioning, Jones separated them. Speaking first with Friedland, he told her to call police if Cesar came to her home, promising a trespass warning would be issued. Then he spoke privately with Cesar. This conversation revealed Jones' fundamental misunderstanding of the situation's gravity. "Look, man, sometimes relationships just don't work out," he told Cesar. "You can't fix this. You gotta find you a new boo." This casual dismissal of Friedland's concerns was compounded by what Jones didn't do. He didn't run Cesar's name through the system, ask about the gun Fridelene mentioned, complete a domestic violence report, offer Fridelene an escort home, connect her with victim services. When questioned later by Internal Affairs, Jones defended his actions. "They both seemed calm when they left. I didn't have a reason to hold him any longer." This statement reveals a profound gap in domestic violence training. The most dangerous abusers often appear perfectly composed to authorities. Their control is their weapon, and Jones handed Cesar back that weapon without restriction. As Fridelene left the station at 8:35 a.m., security footage shows her looking back repeatedly, waiting until Cesar was not visible before hurrying to her car. She called her sister from the parking lot. "I went to the police," she said. "They didn't do much, just told me to call if he shows up again." Her sister urged her to go somewhere else, not home. Fridelene hesitated. "I need to get some things for work. I'll be quick, in and out." This decision, to return home briefly, was made with the reasonable assumption that she had initiated contact with law enforcement. She believed she had started a paper trail. She thought Cesar would be deterred, at least temporarily, by her police visit. She was wrong. What happened in that police station represents more than one officer's failure. It exposes systemic gaps in how domestic violence threats are assessed and addressed. The 45 minutes between Frideline's departure from the station and her murder were a countdown that could have been stopped at multiple points. For every Fridelene whose story ends in tragedy, how many others are walking out of police stations right now, their warnings unheeded? How many are returning to dangerous situations, believing they've taken the right steps to protect themselves? The most devastating aspect of this case isn't just what happened, it's how easily it could have been prevented. At 8:52 a.m., security cameras at Meadows on the Green apartment complex captured Frideline's car turning into the parking lot. She drove slowly, scanning the area before pulling into her assigned space. The footage shows her remaining in her vehicle for nearly 2 minutes, phone pressed to her ear, eyes constantly checking her surroundings. What the cameras didn't capture was the content of that call, a conversation with her aunt in Haiti that would become her final human connection. According to her aunt's later statement to investigators, Friedland was discussing plans to potentially return to Haiti with her daughter. "She told me she didn't feel safe anymore," her aunt recalled. She was thinking about coming home until things calmed down. At 8:54 a.m., Fridelene exited her car, still on the phone. She collected her purse and a small bag from the passenger seat, locked the vehicle, and began walking toward her apartment building. The security footage shows her stopping abruptly, her body language changing from cautious to alarmed. Cesar's black sedan wasn't visible on the complex's cameras. He had parked on the street and walked in through a side entrance, deliberately avoiding detection. Witnesses would later describe seeing him waiting between parked cars, watching the entrance to the lot. Herbert Bedard, a maintenance worker at the complex, was replacing a light fixture nearby when he saw Fridelene freeze mid-step. "She just stopped walking," he told police. Then I saw a man approach her fast from between the cars. The phone call with her aunt captured Frideline's final words. "Oh, did you bring a gun to kill me?" What followed was described by multiple witnesses. Cesar raised his arm and fired repeatedly at close range. The first shot struck Frideline in the chest and abdomen. She fell backward onto the pavement, the phone still clutched in her hand, her aunt hearing everything through the connection. It was like boom, boom, and then a brief, maybe like 2-second pause, I want to say, and 3 or 4 more, recalled Dawn Rosado, who was walking her dog nearby. We just kind of froze there for a moment. Cesar stood over Frideline's body and fired additional shots. Then he walked, not ran, to his car and drove away. The entire attack lasted less than 30 seconds. Emergency calls flooded the Boynton Beach Police Department. The first officers arrived at 9:03 a.m., finding Frideline lying motionless on the pavement. Paramedics pronounced her dead at the scene. Her phone, still connected to the call with her aunt, lay several feet away, the screen shattered by a bullet. Crime scene technicians placed at least 10 evidence markers around shell casings scattered across the parking lot. Blood had pooled beneath Frideline's body, and bullet holes marked nearby vehicles. The medical examiner would later confirm that Frideline had been struck by 7 bullets, 5 of which were fired at point-blank range. As investigators secured the scene, a haunting detail emerged. Frideline's apartment keys were still clutched in her right hand. Her purse contained a half-completed application for an apartment in another city, evidence she had been planning to move. Inside her wallet, officers found a small handwritten note with the address and phone number of a domestic violence shelter. She had been preparing an escape plan, taking the steps victims are advised to take. She had even sought help from authorities just 45 minutes earlier. None of it had been enough to save her. As news of the shooting spread through the complex, residents gathered behind the police tape. Among them was a mother who had just returned from dropping her children at the same school Friedland's daughter attended. "That could have been any of us," she whispered to another onlooker. "Any of us who ever tried to leave someone who wouldn't let go." The murder investigation began with an advantage rarely afforded to homicide detectives. They already knew the killer's identity. As the first responding officers secured the crime scene at Meadows on the Green, Detective Sergeant Maria Vasquez was already assembling a tactical team to apprehend Robens Cesar. Witnesses provided immediate descriptions matching Cesar, and security footage clearly showed his face. Most damning of all, Officer Jones confirmed that both victim and suspect had been at the police station less than an hour earlier, a connection that sent a wave of discomfort through the department. At 10:17 a.m., police surrounded Cesar's residence on Northwest 14th Avenue, just 4 miles from the murder scene. Body camera footage shows officers approaching with weapons drawn, using a bullhorn to order him outside. Cesar emerged with his hands raised, surrendering without resistance. The contrast between his violent attack and calm surrender reflects a pattern common in intimate partner homicides. Once the act is completed, perpetrators often display remarkable composure. This wasn't a crime of momentary passion, but the culmination of calculated intent. During transport to the station, an officer's body camera captured Cesar asking, "Is she dead?" When the officer didn't respond, Cesar nodded slightly, as if confirming something to himself. The interrogation room video shows Cesar sitting quietly, declining water or food. When Detective Vasquez entered and began questioning him, his demeanor remained steady. He waived his Miranda rights and agreed to speak without an attorney present. "Why did you shoot Ms. Daniel?" Vasquez asked directly. "She reported me to police," Cesar replied without emotion. That was the final straw. This statement, clinical and detached, revealed the twisted logic behind his actions. In his mind, Frideline seeking protection was a betrayal that justified her execution. When pressed about following her from the police station, Cesar admitted waiting for her at the apartment complex. "I knew she would go home," he said. "She always goes home after dropping off her daughter." This knowledge of her routine demonstrated the extent of his stalking. He had studied her movements, learned her patterns, and exploited that information to deadly effect. Forensic analysis of Cesar's phone revealed searches for "how to make someone regret leaving you" and "gun laws in Florida." His browser history showed he had researched the penalties for domestic violence in the weeks before the murder. At his first court appearance the following morning, Cesar stood expressionless as the judge denied bond on the first-degree murder charge. The prosecution noted the premeditated nature of the crime, citing the gun purchase weeks earlier and his deliberate pursuit of Fridelene after she sought help. What drives someone to murder a person they claim to love? Forensic psychologists point to a combination of pathological entitlement and catastrophic loss of control. For men like Cesar, relationships represent ownership. When that ownership is threatened, violence becomes a means of reasserting dominance. The most revealing aspect of Cesar's behavior wasn't the murder itself, but his statement about the final straw. In his distorted worldview, Friedlene's attempt to protect herself justified her execution. She hadn't just left him, she had challenged his authority by seeking outside help. This perspective explains why the most dangerous period for domestic violence victims is immediately after they seek intervention. The very act of reaching out for protection can trigger the violence they're trying to escape. As Friedlene's body was transported to the medical examiner's office, a second investigation was already underway within the Boynton Beach Police Department. Chief Joseph DeGuilio ordered an immediate review of Officer Jones' body camera footage and all interactions with Fridelene and Cesar at the station. What internal affairs investigators discovered was disturbing. The footage clearly showed Fridelene stating she feared for her life and explicitly mentioning a gun. It captured her Creole-accented plea, "I don't want you make me die." It also documented Officer Jones' casual dismissal of the situation and his inappropriate advice to Cesar to find a new boo. Within 24 hours, Officer Jones was placed on administrative leave. The department released a carefully worded statement. The Boynton Beach Police Department is actively investigating events which transpired immediately prior to yesterday's shooting. The victim and the suspect were at the Boynton Beach Police Department prior to the incident. What the statement didn't say, but what became clear as the investigation progressed, was that fundamental protocols had been ignored. Florida's domestic violence response guidelines require officers to 1. Separate parties completely during interviews. 2. Conduct thorough threat assessments. 3. Document all claims of weapons possession. 4. Connect potential victims with resources. 5. Consider emergency protective measures. Jones had failed on all counts. When another officer asked Jones what happened with Fridelene and Cesar that morning, his body camera captured Jones's response. "We ran them off. We told them, get the F out of here." This dismissive characterization of a life-or-meth situation became a focal point of the investigation. 2 weeks after Fridelene's murder, Chief DeGuilio announced Jones' punishment: a 2-week unpaid suspension and mandatory completion of 120 hours of additional training, including specialized domestic violence response protocols. Fridelene Daniel's murder at the hands of an ex-boyfriend is a tragic example of domestic violence at its worst, DeGuilio stated. The actions of Officer Jones do not reflect the policing standards of the Boynton Beach Police Department. The community response was immediate and furious. At a packed city council meeting, residents lined up to express outrage at what many viewed as an inadequate response to a fatal failure. 2 weeks suspension for a life, demanded one woman, holding a photo of Fridelene. My parking tickets cost more than his punishment. Haitian community leaders organized a vigil outside the police department, where hundreds gathered with candles and signs reading "She asked for help" and "Her blood is on your hands." Domestic violence advocates pointed to Fridelene's case as emblematic of systemic failures in protecting women from known threats. The Internal Affairs report, released under public records requests, detailed 5 specific instances where Jones made inaccurate statements during his interview with investigators. It concluded that he had failed to uphold the department's core values and had not conducted a proper investigation using state and city domestic violence protocols. Perhaps most painful for Fridelene's family was learning that her 16-year-old daughter had returned from school that day to find her home surrounded by police tape. No one had contacted the school to ensure appropriate notification or support. The teenager learned of her mother's murder from a neighbor who recognized her approaching the scene. This case has exposed critical gaps in how domestic violence threats are handled by law enforcement. If you've experienced dismissal when reporting threats or know someone currently facing similar dangers, please share your insights in the comments. What resources helped you? What actions by authorities made a difference? Your experiences could provide a lifeline to someone watching right now. As the community demanded accountability, a more profound question emerged. How many other Fridelines were out there right now, their warnings unheeded, their lives hanging in the balance? Fridelene Daniel's murder represents the deadliest truth about domestic violence. The most dangerous moment in an abusive relationship is when the victim attempts to leave. Experts call this period separation violence, when control is threatened and abusers often escalate to lethal force. What makes her story particularly heartbreaking is that she did everything victims are advised to do. She established boundaries. She documented the harassment. She sought help from authorities. She had begun planning relocation. Yet in those critical 45 minutes between her police station visit and her murder, the system that should have protected her instead sent her directly into danger. For those currently in dangerous relationships, Fridelene's story offers both warning and guidance. Domestic violence experts emphasize that safety planning must include multiple layers of protection. Tell trusted friends and family about your situation. Create code words that signal emergency without alerting the abuser. Prepare an emergency bag with essential documents and necessities. Contact specialized domestic violence services, not just police. Consider temporary relocation to a shelter during the highest risk period.
During those details, in your opinion, are those signs of a domestic situation?
Yes, absolutely. We recommend for the victim to find a safe place as soon as they can, to leave wherever the abuse is happening, that home, and to get out.
Carolina Mesa is a primary therapist with Home Safe Safety Net program, which provides resources for victims of domestic violence.
Extreme jealousy is usually a red flag. The fact that he couldn't stand the sight of seeing her with somebody else, that level of possessiveness is usually a sign of violence within the home.
Police say Fridelene and Cesar were at the police department earlier that day, but hours later, she was found dead, shot outside of her apartment by Cesar.
For anybody out there, if you are struggling and the relationship's unhealthy, it is a dangerous time when you're getting ready to leave that person. So it's important that you get those resources in place. 211 also helps victims and says resources are available without needing a police report to get services. You have to know what's going on around you because that individual can still come around even if they have a restraining order. Boynton Beach police wouldn't comment on the officer involved or the investigation, but say that it is protocol for an officer to be placed on leave. They are investigating to see if policies and procedures were followed by the officer. Cesar is being held without bond.
Resources exist that don't require police involvement. The National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-7233, provides confidential support and connection to local services. Many communities have organizations that offer emergency housing, legal advocacy, and safety planning. Fridelene's case has already sparked changes in police training in several Florida jurisdictions. New protocols require officers to conduct separate, thorough interviews when domestic violence is reported, regardless of whether physical violence has occurred. Mentions of firearms trigger mandatory background checks and consideration of emergency protective orders. But systemic change requires more than policy updates. It demands a fundamental shift in how threats against women are perceived and prioritized. When someone says, "I fear for my life," those words must be taken at face value, not dismissed, not minimized, not forgotten. The ultimate tragedy of Fridelene's story isn't just that she died, it's that her death was preventable at multiple points. Her murder represents not one failure, but a cascade of missed opportunities to intervene. As we conclude this case, remember that somewhere right now, someone is gathering the courage to leave a dangerous relationship. Someone is weighing the risks of staying against the risks of leaving. Someone is hoping the system will protect them when they make that choice. If you're watching this and recognize warning signs in your own relationship or someone close to you, don't wait. Reach out now, and if you've survived a similar situation, share what helped you escape. Your experience could save a life. This is True Crime Malice, where we don't just tell stories, we demand better endings for future victims. Subscribe for more cases that matter, and remember, when someone tells you they're afraid, believe them the first time.